No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world. I'm back in here with DJ Vlad for the second time. How you living, Vlad?
I'm good, man.
Yeah?
No complaints.
No complaints.
No complaints.
What, do you recall any other particular feedback from your first interview? I saw a million comments that were like, I can't believe I'm seeing his face for the first time, which is kind of funny to me because obviously if you want to see Vlad's face, it's not too well kept of a secret.
Nah, the whole thing was like his voice doesn't match his face. And when have you ever heard someone's voice matching their face before you actually see their face?
Right.
Like ever in life.
And if you hear somebody's voice a million times before you see them, then it's almost 100% 1-to-1 that you're going to be surprised by how they look like.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Definitely. I've had people walk up to me in real life. One time I was just standing there. It was maybe kind of early in me doing the YouTube thing, but I was talking to a girl, and a guy walked up to me and said, I listened to your podcast, and I recognized your voice. And I had never had that. I was like, I would have thought you would have seen me.
All the time.
You do? You have that just from you talking?
All the time.
Really?
Yeah. I'll be like at the weed shop or the grocery store or whatever, and they're like, man, you sound just like Vlad TV. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh, shit. Like, I get that more than people actually recognize me in person.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. But, I mean, you're more of an audio guy, and I'm more of an on-camera guy, I guess.
More of a voice, yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. No, yeah. It's also, okay, so how would you rate the extent to which you get called a Fed right now in comparison to, 2 years ago, 4 years ago? Because I was kind of shocked when I tweeted about it, like, I need questions for Vlad. That it seemed like almost 100% of the people would just rather make that joke than ask for a legitimate
question. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess about as much. I mean, we got bigger, so I guess we get it more to a certain degree. There's probably more like actual fake stories floating around. Like there was this one about how the judge thanked ARAB for thanked Vlad TV to helping get ARAB locked up, which is not true at all.
That's the kind of thing that if you really just wanted to think up something that would go viral, that's the kind of thing you might come up with because obviously no judge is going to fucking say that.
Right. I mean, there was a picture of a judge. I have no idea whether it's the judge in the case or there's like this old white guy. And he's like thanking me for that shit. And, I mean, I got it taken down from most of the known accounts, but there was like these kind of other bozo accounts like my mixtapes and some other crap out there that just wouldn't remove it. But
there's a couple of outlets that seem like they've sort of transitioned from real news to fake news over the past couple of years, which is kind of strange.
Yeah. Well, because you could get way more views that way, right?
Yeah.
I remember, I think it was like On Smash did a story about Tekashi's going to be let out like the day of his sentencing. And it was like trending and everything, and I called lawyers about it. They're like, there's no way they could know this. And sure enough, he wasn't. And then the next day they were bragging about how they were trending the day before. But I'm like, y'all trending off fake news. Like, why even brag about that? But,
that one's super confusing to me because On Smash was a pretty reputable site if you go back to like 2006, 2007, sort of early blog era.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure what has happened because they
got shut down, remember?
They did get shut down, but is it a different owner now?
No, I think it's the same owner. They got shut down by the feds, but they eventually, they started free On Smash, I think.
Right.
But, you lose that momentum. You lose that momentum of everyone going to your actual URL because there's no forwarding, right? Because the feds control it.
Yeah.
So you lose that momentum, and a lot of people just think you're over. So it's kind of hard to recover from that unless you reinvent yourself.
Right.
So that's the hard part about that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I understand the spectrum of thought that people are on because sometimes you can title a video as somebody else saying something, like something else that somebody said that you kind of know isn't true and that you're sort of like reporting on them saying something that isn't true. So then you could sort of see how it's a slippery slope where an outlet could then start to get more and more comfortable with like, well, I guess we could just totally lie. And that could get people talking a lot. But I mean, your credibility being put at stake like that is a very tricky thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of people accuse us of, quote unquote clickbait. But what I consider clickbait is you title something that the content does not correspond to. So to me, we never do clickbait, but we want people to click, right? I mean, we do want people to click and watch the video. So we try to entice people with the titles, but we always feel like you got to make the titles true. The person has to have said it. And, we don't put it out as a fact. I mean, this is them saying it. And it's always accurate. And, occasionally a writer somehow gets it wrong or whatever, and we have to kind of adjust things here and there. But I would say 99.9% of the time, we get it right. And it's true.
There was a bunch of outlets who put out stories a couple of days ago basically saying that there were too many purchased plays on the Nicki Minaj and 6ix9ine song, so it wasn't actually a number one. Then you fast forward a few days, and the song actually is number one.
Yeah.
But we already had a video that was like a clip from our weekly podcast, the No Jumper Show, that was titled, I think, like how Nicki Minaj and 6ix9ine faked the number one. At the time, that seemed like an accurate title, and now that song actually went number one, even though, myself and probably a lot of other people would argue that this is sort of a duplicitous meaning of the term number one, since I'm pretty sure that the only reason why it's number one is just because the Barbs were willing to buy as many merch combos as possible.
Well, they spent money to purchase 14 million YouTube views. Imagine how much that would cost. Imagine the amount of money it would take to boost a video by 14 million views. Like 100, 200, $500,000, like maybe even $1 million, if you really think about it. And the whole thing of, bundling merch or, live concert sales into an album and somehow manipulating the number that way, I don't know. It just seems like it totally defeats the purpose of having a number one song, right? Because you could have the number one merch, or you could have the number one show, but to somehow combine it all and to say you have the number one song because people buy your merch, I just think that's, I understand you set out the rules and people are going to manipulate the rules to their best ability to try to make themselves look better, but I just feel like the rules are flawed.
And they keep changing the rules because, like, for instance, that DJ Khaled album, there was some sort of energy drink tie-in, and they basically ruled that after that, you weren't able to do that because, the energy drink has nothing to do with the actual album. So then when you look at the 6ix9ine Nicki thing, it's like they have, if you look at his website, it's like an unbelievable amount of merch from, I think, cassette singles, records, t-shirts, hoodies, shorts, hats, masks, everything. And it all relates back to the content. So technically it counts. But if you really want to look at like what his true genius was here, I think it was that he partnered up with Nicki Minaj, who has probably the most rabid, willing to spend money fan base that you could think of in this category. Like they everybody knows that the Barbs are this legendary entity on the internet. And, he wasn't able to go number one on his first song just by himself, but then you team up with the Barbs. And the thing is that those purchases are worth like 1 million streams or many hundreds of thousands of streams, et cetera, when you just purchase one copy.
Well, remember the first song, Billboard said that there was just a massive amount of bots. It was like 4 times as many bots on that song than usual. So, look, man, a guy that's willing to tell on everyone around him, even his friends, has no problem getting fake views, paying for fake views or trying to get around a system to once again make him look better. This is all par for the course. This is his thing.
And it's weird. I don't feel like anybody is really looking at him going number one as a sign that his career is necessarily in a good place. It feels like him getting number one in this song still feels like it's part of this overall story of people just losing interest in him, which is not normally how it works.
Yeah, I don't know who's celebrating that number one outside of him and Nicki.
Yeah.
And her fans are probably celebrating, but I don't know. And he didn't get any support from radio or playlists or anything else like that. He had to try to use other means, I guess, to try to get there. Like I said, man, I'm not really feeling the whole thing. I've said it plenty of times in my interviews. I think what he did was foul. I think he tried to repaint it by saying he was a victim, but clearly he was the ringleader and he was the one that was getting people to do all this shit. And when suddenly he was facing time himself, he went and told on everybody to get out of doing time himself. That's why he told on everyone, not because of the reasons he gave. Oh, they were stealing my money and fucking my girl or whatever, you know. No, I was facing time, so I told on everybody. This was his mentality. So
my heart is a little bit warmed seeing the hip hop worlds come together to sort of collectively blacklist him from stuff like playlists and a lot. Like, you would think that doing a big song with Nicki Minaj that objectively has her rapping very well and everything, you know, the beat sounds like a catchy popular song or whatever, but to still see so many people just really going out of their way to not support it sort of instills it in my heart a little bit more that, like, okay, the rap world can come together to collectively enact change, even if it's about something like this.
Yeah, I mean, I've known Akon for like 15 years. Like, when me and Akon run into each other, it's like, oh, yo, like, we'll go to the side and we'll catch up for like, you know, 15, 20 minutes and talk. Like, I really respect the guy. But when I saw the video of him doing Locked Up Part 2 with Tekashi, I was just like, yo, it can't be for the money because he's already wealthy. He's been wealthy. I mean, massive songs, a lot of businesses. He signed a ton of artists in Africa and everything else like that. He's wealthy. So I don't know why he's doing it. I really don't.
I really wonder if we're ever going to hear that song. Because it almost sounded like, you know, to put out a snippet like that and then to immediately kind of go quiet on it and then do the song with Nicki and everything, it seems kind of out of the ordinary for him. Normally throughout his career, we've seen him like hype one song up for a long period of time and then drop the song. So for him to do that little snippet thing with Akon, then do the Nicki thing, I feel like the momentum has already kind of been lost for the Locked Up Part 2. I feel like that was almost a skit in the sense that we're not going to get an actual song out of it, and that them doing the song together on the iPhone was the whole thing.
Maybe, or it might be on the album.
Yeah.
Who knows? I don't know, man. I don't talk to the guy. Me and Akon haven't talked in a little bit. You know, probably about a year and a half or so.
Would you describe it as disappointment that he did that, or how would you characterize it?
Well, Akon's always been like a street guy. Like, his first song was Locked Up, which was his experiences being locked up from running like a stolen car ring in New Jersey. And I know for a fact, like, I've been at his house and we've hung out and I've been around people, like, he surrounds himself with street guys. Like, he puts these guys on payroll. He got like real, you know, street people around him. So it's not like he's just oblivious to all this. It's not like, well, I don't know, I'm a suburban guy and I have no idea about all this. No, like, he's an actual guy who understands these codes and understands the repercussions and has friends in prison. And I remember one of his friends got killed. His old manager, I think. It was like in a parking lot in Jersey. I forgot his name, but it was like a serious situation. Like, this dude had like an Akon chain and everything else. I think it was over to the chain possibly. But like, he's seen the ramifications and lives destroyed over people snitching. I mean, Tekashi helped give out over 70 years, plus 2 life sentences that are pending. Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about if he did not get on that stand and cooperate. A lot of those guys would have probably had their time shaved by 75%. They had a guy that was participating in everything who was right there. You take that away, and the feds have somewhat of a weak case. So, I don't know. I mean, like I said, me and Akon probably, you know, will have a talk about this at some point. But at this point, when I saw the optics of it, it was kind of a disappointment.
Yeah, I wonder if it's to an extent like Akon is so real and the 6ix9ine thing is so self-evidently like fake and, you know, never should have been taken serious in the first place, that to him it's so off the radar of him even thinking of it as a real situation or whatever. Like, even Nicki, when I watched the Instagram Live with her defending it, she was very much saying, you know, this is music. This is the music business. Like, you know, she was like really drawing a line in the sand there. Like, I'm around some people who really care about street shit. This is not that. And in a way, then it starts to kind of make sense. Like, oh, he's somebody you can just go do music with. I still don't really like it. I still don't really respect it. But it's interesting to see how different people might compartmentalize this and put it into a box so that they don't have to feel bad about it.
Well, I mean, if you look at Nicki's history, I mean, just from like like, let's just say dealing with people who are responsible for sexual abuse, from her brother to her husband Tekashi, I don't think that she really paints a line of, morals in terms of people that she associates with. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's her line to paint. Like, if one of my family members was a child molester, that'd be it.
Oh yeah.
I can't support that person.
Right.
Cousin, brother, sister, whatever. If, she wrote a letter on her brother's behalf,
right,
asking the court, for leniency on him when he was convicted of just brutally molesting a little girl,
right,
for like years. I can't be cool with that.
I have somebody I'm close to who recently was talking about how growing up they had an uncle that was like the creepy uncle who like their parents wouldn't let them be around this uncle, and everybody sort of thought that the uncle might be touching kids or something. And I'm like, you guys just let him be around? Like, if you really genuinely think that, like, if it's a joke or if it's sort of sarcastic or whatever, like, okay, fine. But if you really think that, you're just going to be nice to him to be polite and not be like, you're not invited to the barbecue, the actual like barbecue at your house, not the metaphysical barbecue.
No, you can't. But people, I think unfortunately what happens in certain households, especially when there's not a lot of money to go around, and you don't have money for childcare or have money for school or after school programs or whatever, you just have your relatives helping you out with taking care of the kids, and it's like, these people really haven't vetted properly and aren't watched and monitored properly. You'll see when you have kids, you got kids on the way.
I know, it's a crazy feeling.
And yeah, man, you'll see how protective you get when you have a baby, and like it's like, oh, like I can't just let my male cousin watch her, for 12 hours or.
So in your head, like everybody is a suspect, sort of, like in a sense that you never would have really considered previously.
I think that I think that when you look at children, like you just have to be. It pays to be overly paranoid. Point blank, period. Like, I mean, look at the Tekashi situation. If you look at what he pled guilty to, was a pretty heinous act with like a 13-year-old girl. Like, she was actually having, I think, oral sex or vaginal sex, like on camera, while he was like cheering it on. Like, he went on academics and told a different story. But if you, for example, listen to like the Tekashi Complex podcast that they did on him, where they had the actual reporters and everything else like that, they're breaking down the whole thing. Like, he has a thing of recreating the story.
In the most sympathetic way possible.
In the most sympathetic way. I think nothing happened to her. No, something happened to her.
I think I've been guilty of basically like reiterating his version of it. But then I've talked to other people who have seen the video, which I don't think is like easy to get your hands on because it's basically child porn. And they've basically made it sound like it actually is like a lot more disturbing.
No, it's very disturbing. It's very disturbing. And he pled guilty to it.
Right.
And, if he didn't have a bunch of money at the time, I think he'd be in prison right now. Quite honestly. But, you get the best lawyers and they fight and they get you, a good deal. But, he was over 18. She was like 13. He was participating in this somewhat. She was like sitting on his lap and everything else like that. I'm cool on all that, man.
Right. Do you feel, okay, so there's kind of that conversation that goes down in the sense of like, should media outlets and rap be posting this dude at all? Is there an extent to which even when people cover him in like a purely documentarian way or where you may be like asking somebody about him or having somebody else give their thoughts on him, like where do you draw the line in terms of like just promoting somebody that you don't think is ultimately good for the culture versus documenting things that are happening with somebody who's like objectively one of the biggest stories in hip hop?
Well, look, I mean, we've covered Tekashi since, the beginning of his career pretty much. And before he got locked up, we were covering him a lot. Like damn near everything he did, we would cover it. But after the snitching thing happened, he came home. I told my staff, like, let me cover the big stories, like cover him having to get relocated because the little white girl next door,
right?
you know,
Hilarious.
saw
That was a great
on
moment.
video. You know,
I wonder what she's doing right now.
you know, cover that. But are we covering him going number one? Nah, I don't think so. Are we covering him beefing with whoever else he's beefing with right now? Nah, because it's repetitive. You could just do that so many times until people just get kind of tired of it. But listen, man, look, he got his own path. He set up his own way. He came home with a bunch of money. I mean, it's like T.K. Kirkland says, like a fairy tale. He snitches on everyone and comes home to millions of dollars. It's like a fairy tale. You know, who could have caused you? Who could call something like that? And he's going home rapping about shooting people and
at the chicken spot. And his second Instagram live back, he basically focused it on accusing, Meek Mill and Snoop Dogg of ratting. Or not Meek Mill so much. He was accusing like Snoop. But Desiree Perez, I believe it is, from Rock Nation. He's like trying to say basically that Meek is a snitch because Meek affiliates himself with this executive at Rock Nation. I mean, nobody covered the stuff that he was talking about there. It just seemed like
I've known about that though. I've known about that story. Yeah, I mean, it's actually. I mean, you could find articles on her. She cooperated, I guess, to get some drug dealers arrested or something like that.
Right.
And I mean, the Snoop story. If you look at the Reggie Wright Jr. Interview that we did a while back, he talks about the incident that led to the alleged police report that Snoop made. Now, whether that police report is 100% accurate, I'm not 100% sure. But there was an incident with some ex-death row people and Snoop, and there was a fight. And that actually happened. There's an LA Times article about that.
Right. It just feels like nobody really cares that much. And like,
really.
If he was as big as he seems to be, then him saying those things about people who are so beloved in rap should make bigger reverberations. And it doesn't really feel like that's actually happening.
Well, you got to come with some proof also. I mean, anyone could accuse anyone of anything, like me getting accused for the judge thanking me, and there's a picture of the judge. Like, I mean, yeah, that looks cool in a meme, but there's also memes about 5G causing coronavirus. Like, man. And people burn down, like 5G towers because of that. So there is a certain degree of that, but it's not going to go all the way across the board until it's actually verified by a real source. Right.
This came out, I think, yesterday, is that Meek Mill asked or commented on Academic's Instagram saying, don't cover me anymore. It's very interesting because presumably there's a lot of rappers that like don't want to be covered by the outlets that cover them. And very rarely do they ask that question, and even more rarely do the person who covers them actually say, okay. How's that stand out to you? Like, if Meek Mill said that to you, how would you feel about it?
What's his name said that to me? Kick Push. What's his name?
Lupe Fiasco?
Lupe Fiasco said, DJ Vlad, don't cover me anymore. And I'm like, okay.
Right.
I'm still going to cover you if there's something about you to cover.
Right.
I've had a few people telling me that, but it's like, I mean, unless there's a reason not to cover you, we're still running a business here.
Right.
We still have to report on the news. Like, that's part of my business is VladTV.com, which is a news site. So him asking academics not to cover him, I don't know. Maybe academics will do it. Maybe he won't. I remember at one point, wasn't he complaining that academics wasn't like supporting his album or something like that? So it's.
But I think at one point academics stopped posting him in general because another member of the Dream Chasers basically threatened him, saying don't say whatever about Meek, and academics didn't appreciate that. My attitude basically would be like, if you say don't cover me, you're basically asking me to only cover the serious news stuff, meaning like the stuff that we have to cover, which is basically the negativity. Because it's like, if your album comes out and we post about that, that's basically us doing promo on your behalf. If you put out a new music video and we post up a clip from it, that's us just showering attention upon whatever it is that you're doing. If you get into a fight at the mall, or if you end up fighting with your girl, or if you end up shooting a gun in the air or whatever, those are all things that it's almost like as a news outlet you have to cover because that's actual news. Covering albums and music, etc., is very, very optional in comparison.
Promo, yeah. And I think it's a very old school way of thinking where there was just a couple of news outlets, and you could potentially control those news outlets. Like the amount of times that I've had PR people or managers or entourage members or the person themselves hit me up and like, I don't want this out. You know, I remember Doja Cat after our interview, she said, I don't want that interview out. And I'm like, all right, it's still coming out.
What do you think it was in particular that she wasn't cool with about that album?
I had no idea.
Or interview?
The interview. I have no idea because I think I didn't answer, and then she was like, "Oh, it's like that," and then she like blocked me everywhere. I have no idea. It ended up being her biggest interview, I think.
I don't think she's done a lot of other ones, or at least not a lot of other
She's done a few.
She has. Okay.
She's done a few, I think. But you know,
I feel like you probably asked the good questions, and then most of the other ones were sort of like flattery and whatnot.
Yeah, that fluff.
Yeah,
fluff bullshit.
That was a weird one.
Yeah, but no, she was like, I don't want that interview coming out. You know, can I buy it back from you or something? And I'm like, no. Well, I didn't answer. My answer was basically, I mean, she saw that I'd read it, and I just didn't answer. And then she got mad at me. She's like, oh, it's like that. And then she blocked me on all social media. You know, and then once all this stuff started coming out of her laughing at the racist jokes and the Didn't Do Nothing song and stuff like that, it's like, flashback. Flashback. It's coming back.
Do you think people went a little hard on her? It felt like that was, for people who are forgetting, that was like the week or maybe 2 weeks prior to basically the George Floyd thing happening and like this whole conversation getting kicked into really high gear. It felt like the world was really looking for somebody to not be happy with at that moment, and somehow she ended up getting subbed in, and then she immediately got subbed out as soon as there was bigger stuff to talk about.
I mean, I look at that as kind of some serious allegations. People are like, I saw on Twitter, it said Doja Cat and her only clans followers.
At one point, only clans was trending.
Was it?
Yeah.
Was it because of her?
I think Metro Boomin might have said it, or somebody said it, but yes, it was definitely related to her.
That was the first time I heard it today. But like, let me tell you, like that song, Didn't Do Nothing, that term, the last time I heard that term was the David Duke.
Really?
Was tweeting that about my interview with Talib Kweli.
Wow, really?
You know, David Duke, who was the main villain of Black Klansman, you know, an actual Grand Dragon Ku Klux Klan member who I guess had some sort of public, you know, office at some point, who was still active on social media.
Right.
Said like, yeah, DJ Vlad just interviewed Didn't Do Nothing, Talib Kweli. And that's a term that is used by racists to make fun of black people getting killed by the police.
Right.
As like, oh, that black guy didn't do nothing. You know, he just got killed for no reason. Like, it's like that sarcasm, like making fun of a person's, you know, situation. It's a really ugly racist term.
Right.
And she knew what that meant. And she turns around and did a song like that, I guess trying to, you know, and this was, I guess, early on before she popped, before Bitch I'm a Cow came out and started to really set her career off. So, you know, you do certain things early on to troll, to try to get on, and then those things end up biting you at the end of the day. So, I don't know. I kind of think that the things that she said and the reaction people had was justified. And the question is whether she's gonna continue on that path or whether she's gonna use that as learning experience. I mean, shit, look what that Justin Bieber video, you know, with the N-word and One Less Lonely N-word, and like that was just an ugly, ugly song.
You still see people revisiting and re-finding out about that on a consistent basis, even though I've known about it for like a decade.
In my interview with Talib Kweli once again.
Oh yeah, he didn't know about it. I remember that.
I played it for him for the first time, and he was like, yo, I've been around this guy. I've been backstage with him. Like, I had no idea this is what he was doing in his spare time. Like, yo, this is gonna be uncomfortable next time. But look, people love him now. You got a new song with Quavo that's on the charts. Like, everyone forgot about it. I mean, a hit song kind of fixes everything.
Yeah, I mean, Eminem went away for like 4 or 5 years when his whole little saga happened with that. Like that, people sort of underrate the extent to which that really kind of changed the way that Eminem went about his life. You didn't see him in so many like mixed public settings where he was just around a bunch of random people. It feels like that made him a bit more reclusive, which he was already pretty reclusive.
Yeah. There's some other videos.
Of M that never came out?
Not exactly of M, but I've got some stuff in my inbox that I was like, oh, shit.
Does it involve him performing on stage with people and saying it during a...
I'm not going to say nothing else.
Because I might have heard
I'm just
about
saying
something
there's something around that overall story that that I've got some videos sent to me that was like, whew, this comes out, this is going to be a whole new...
What made you choose not to put it out, though?
Because I felt like a lot of it was just sort of old news, and it wasn't exactly him. It was more like someone around him. And I have a relationship with certain people around him. Like me and Royce are real cool. So like in this particular situation, I just hit up Royce and say, hey, listen, since I don't know M personally at all, but me and Royce have been cool forever, for like 12, 15 years, something like that. So I just hit up Royce and said, listen, I got this in my inbox. And I'm not going to show it to you or whatever, but this is what the video is of. I'm not going to put it out, but you should probably let your man know that it's being shopped around and it may come out. It may bite him if it does. But I'm not going to be the one to break it.
Right.
But yeah, I get a lot of stuff like that, man. There's been a lot of stuff that people think that I just put out anything that I can get my hands on, but there's a lot of stuff over the years that I've gotten just said, either I'm not going to fuck with it or I'll hit up the people who it's about and say, hey, listen, I'm going to give you a heads up. This is kind of what's happening behind the scenes. And sometimes it's not even true. It's like, this is nonsense. Like, I don't even know these people. Like, or sometimes like, oh shit, okay, let me go talk to my family about this and, prepare and so forth.
But Royce was one person who I noticed dropping a comment or two unhappy with the conversation that we had about Dame.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was.
I didn't know that.
I think he was in Dame's comments saying something like, "I'll remember this interview" or something. Like there was a couple other people too that I took note of who were not exactly excited about the conversation we had about Dame. And personally, I didn't feel like I went to. I mean, you definitely made it perfectly clear how you felt about him.
Yeah.
I felt like I kind of kept it reined in a little bit, but that didn't really stop me from getting the blowback there.
Yeah, I mean, Dame talks shit about me. like how many videos of him calling me a culture vulture and all this other type of shit? I'm the one who introduced him to Complex. I set up that business relationship for him. Like, I wasn't involved in it, but I made the introduction. And this is a company that I've been with since the beginning, that we both made millions of dollars together. So this is an important relationship. I go and bring this guy in. He doesn't instantly get the money that he was expecting to get. And then he starts trashing everyone at the company and starts calling the president a culture vulture. And it's like, yo, like, I made this introduction. And here you are shitting all over this relation, these people who I respect. And I made the introduction. Like, you don't. And I was like, this dude don't have respect for nobody. He just does not have respect for anybody. And he does not care. I mean, I remember there was this one part when me and him, when we first met, there was this short film called Word on the Street that I was trying to push to various Hollywood outlets. At one point, like, there was one film company that I was interested in it, but no one really bit. So he said it, and he saw it, and he loved it. And so I made the introduction with the guy who put it together and everything else like that. And then when me and him kind of had our falling out, that guy, not knowing our situation, hit him up, said, hey, do you still want to do it? And Dame's response was like, yeah, I want to do it, but I want to cut Vlad out. This is the type of person that we're dealing with. People are like, oh, Dame is such a great business person. Like, nah, he's a bridge burner.
Yeah.
He burns bridges with everybody. Didn't he just get sued and lose?
Who did he get sued by?
There was like this woman who, I guess they're saying that he stole her script or something like that, and she won in court.
Right.
So, and just look where everyone is. Like, look at where Jay is, and look at where Dame is.
Yeah.
And when you look at these partnerships, you have to say, because when you have a successful partnership and people go their separate ways, all the people are going to say, well, that was all me. Or I was the main part of it. I was a big part of it. But when you split, you kind of see where the talent lies based on the person who continues to do well, versus the people that just fall off. And you can just look at the Rockefeller situation and it speaks for itself. If he was really that dude, wouldn't he be he'd make another Jay.
Right.
As opposed to trying to be a rock singer at
Is that still going?
50-something years old. Like,
is that still happening? I don't know.
I don't know. You're the one who saw it.
I did see it. I saw it in real life, and I've seen clips online as well. Yeah, I mean, my whole thing with Dame is my only issue with him is that I felt like through doing that podcast that we were going to get to a point where we were going to be able to have really good conversations. And after like doing 3 or 4 episodes, I just started to realize like, oh, there's no way. This is definitely absolutely not happening. Like he argues in such a way that he really wants to win the argument and doesn't really give a fuck about the actual integrity of the conversation.
Yeah, well, I don't think Dame actually talks to you. He talks at you. He just talks. Talks and talks and talks and talks and talks and talks. And you're sitting there going like, it's almost you can walk out the room and come back and he's still talking about the same topic. Yeah, he doesn't listen, man. Yeah, like I said in our podcast, I think that he's an interesting person, interesting figure, and has a very interesting history. And if he was just more of a respectful human being, people would fuck with him more. And I'm sure he's gonna see this guy. I don't give a fuck. I don't fuck Vlad TV. Fuck no John. I don't need him anyways. They're all culture vultures. But it's like, okay, but the more people that don't fuck with you, the harder it is to do what you're trying to do.
Right.
You know, people do these interviews and people watch and go, Especially when we talk about successful people. Like, successful people don't have to fuck with you. They have options to do whatever they want. When you run your own company and the company's doing really well, you've gotten to that point by doing things that feel right. Not because, I'm just going to make a bunch of money over here, so let me just get insulted for the next 3 hours just so I can make a few dollars. Like, I'm not going to do that.
Right. Yeah. I could totally imagine, like, but that's the thing is that if he were to just consistently make YouTube content that was in any way like structured in such a way that it was appealing to the audience, but he won't just like do a YouTube channel and like put his stuff on it because he believes that he's building a streaming company and that putting his stuff on YouTube would be in some way like a compromise.
Someone sent me this thing where it was like some American Gangster type interview or whatever, and the logo kind of looked like the Vlad TV logo in the bottoms.
Really?
It's actually kind of funny. I mean, it was exactly like it, but it was like the same kind of color scheme and whatever else. I'm like, yeah, all right.
The thing that I got some heat for too, though, in particular, I heard Joe Budden say on his podcast, is he just said, I didn't like how Adam was judging how Dame was interacting with his kids. Because there was this like reality show clip that came out. Yeah. And to be fair, his kids are like adults in this clip. Like I'm pretty sure they're both over the age of 18. And he's arguing with them. And of course you could say that, it's reality TV. The way that they're going to skew this is definitely different than how it might really have been. For me, I could definitely see how it could be seen as distasteful to be commenting on how somebody takes care of their 3-year-old or whatever, their 4 or 5-year-old, because they're so young and it is this very, particular thing. When it comes to like how you're dealing with your grown ass kids on a reality show that you chose to put out there into the world, I don't really feel like there's anything inherently bad about having an opinion about how somebody relates to their grown ass kids once they're adults on TV.
Well, I've never seen the clip, right? So I can't comment specifically about what Dame did in that particular clip. But like I remember me and I think me and TK Kirkland were talking about this, about how, like for example, like the Dwayne Wade situation. Like you have this, how old is this son? Like 13, something like that. And he's transgender, he's transitioning, whatever. And people feel like, well, you shouldn't say anything about that child because it's just a child. But TK kind of made the point like, all right, well, if this was your own private dealings, then yeah, you're right. It's all private. It's really no one's business. But when you go on a promo tour to promote your son's transgender transition, whatever you want to call it, then people are going to have their opinion. So if you want to go on a show and show the way that you're talking to your kids, mother, father, relative, friends, whatever, people are going to comment about it. So you're going to get mad at people commenting about something that someone's putting out and they sign release forms and they agree to be edited and agree to be broadcast and stuff like that, and you're mad about that, well, then they never should have put it out. You should turn around and point at the person who actually did it. Dame didn't have to say what he said on camera, but he wanted to make for interesting content, obviously. Or maybe he was just being him, and that's just how he deals with his kids. I don't know. I've never seen the clip, but for someone to say, well, Adam shouldn't comment about that, it's a damn TV show. You're supposed to comment on it.
Right.
Cut it out.
Yeah, seems kind of crazy to me. Do you think that Boosie said anything that was terribly over the line when it came to the Dwayne Wade thing? Do you think he passed the point of just like having an opinion?
Well, Boosie was thinking that his son was gonna cut his penis off. I mean, that was Boosie said, "Don't cut his dick off, man. Don't do it, man. He's only 13." I think that's what Boosie was thinking. Boosie doesn't have much of a filter, right? It's not like he was really thinking something else and he was just saying that. I think Boosie really thought that he was going to get an actual operation, which I think would be a catastrophe, because imagine cutting your penis off at 13 and realizing you like women at 18.
Normalizing that seems like particularly dark to me, like just to tell a kid, because there are a lot of these horror stories from young people who had the gender reassignment surgery at a young age, and then they basically realize at a certain point, and like this is how they describe it, as like they end up feeling like they were sort of brainwashed by these communities to think that this is like the normal way. Like if you're a boy and you like, you know, makeup and dolls and shit, then it's a normal way to deal with the fact that you have a different type of personality, to just have your entire gender changed irreversibly.
I mean, I'm assuming this 13-year-old boy hasn't had sex yet, period. Period. So how do you know what you're into sexually if you haven't actually had sex?
Right.
Like, think about it. At one point, you and I had never had sex, right? Not together, but with women.
Right.
Like, that sounded crazy when I said it. With other women, is what I meant.
Pause. Disclaimer on the screen right here. Insert Dame saying pause.
Right, like at one point, you and I were virgins, right? And we had never had a sexual experience with a woman. So at that point in time, if someone starts, oh, you know, you're really, you know, all your friends are boys, right? You're really, like, I remember watching The Tiger King, and he was talking about like his newest husband, you know, like the young guy. Did you watch The Tiger King?
Oh, yeah.
And he was like, and the guy was like, well, I didn't really know I was gay until I got with him. And then the Tiger King was like, yeah, you know, when I'm talking to him, I'm like, do you watch porn, right? And he's like, yeah. He's like, well, do you like big penises or small penises when you watch porn? And the guy's like, big penises. Well, that means you're gay.
The Joe Exotic type, like the way Joe Exotic just kept finding these like handsome young men who are stupid enough that he could convince them to be gay.
Who are not gay, right?
Right.
Because that one guy with the missing teeth, he went and got like the receptionist pregnant and ran off, and now he's straight. But like, you could be in an environment and be manipulated into thinking that you're into something you're not really into, and then as you mature and get older and have more experiences, and it's like, oh, I like vagina, like.
But the way that
I like women, like I'm not really. I may think I'm gay or transgender, but once I actually have this experience, it's not something I want to do, and now I'm really into women. But you don't know that at 13.
Right, and everybody has drank the Kool-Aid to such a degree that you can't question anybody or anything about this new ideology, even if you're talking about an actual child. And even if you're their father. I mean, it's like you have to be proud and you have to support them to such an extent that I think there's a lot of things that are being normalized that maybe, you know, at least deserve examination. And the way that Boosie was treated when he had that opinion publicly, I mean, this is Boosie. Like, we're just all used to him having very loud, inflammatory opinions about everything. Yeah. And for Boosie to take a stance like that was so clearly how he actually feels, and to have, like, the story about Jay-Z trying to reach out to have a conversation with him about it, and Boosie basically just rejecting it. I like that Boosie did that.
Not exactly. That's not exactly how it went.
Okay.
We talked about it. Yeah. Right. No, it wasn't really that. It was like someone who knew Jay-Z or something was saying, hey, you know, dude, do you want to maybe talk to him? And he's like, no, I'm good. It wasn't like Jay-Z got on the phone and he hung up on Jay-Z.
Because it's kind of weird to imagine Jay-Z being that concerned about like trans rights that he needs to get on the phone with Boosie.
Yeah, no, that didn't happen. A lot of stories, but it's funny how these stories, like I remember I just interviewed New Jack, you know, the wrestler. You know what that is?
No.
He's like this really insane wrestler from this thing called ECW.
Oh, I love ECW.
Yeah.
And I like the Mark Henry one as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, this guy was just like a maniac. And then like I'm watching this documentary. It's called The Dark Side of the Ring. It was done by Vice, which kind of got me interested in
about Chris Benoit. Or he's the new series in that documentary series,
he's
right?
one of the people.
Okay, right.
Yeah, but we talked about Chris Benoit as well, which is a really tragic story.
Crazy.
New Jack was actually friends with Chris's wife.
Okay.
You know, when that shit happened. But we start, you know, as we're getting to the interview, I'm like, okay, you used to be a bounty hunter. He's like, yeah, for a bunch of years. And I'm like, okay, and you killed 4 people. And he's like, that shit ain't true. He's like, yeah, people said it, I've run with it. And in the Vice documentary, they really talk about it. Yeah, you killed 4 people. You know, and when me and him talked about it, he's like, nah, I just let people run with it. I've never killed anybody.
That's so impressive.
It was a cool story, but
he chose to tell you that it wasn't true. Because
it wasn't true.
I'm pretty sure there's rappers out there that are walking around acting like they got bodies that they don't have.
Yeah. Let me tell you. I mean, there are some rappers that have rapped about killing people. I have heard they weren't actually the ones who killed that person. It was someone else that was there that actually did the murder, and you know, and the rapper sort of covered up for him and took the overall charge because it could be justified as self-defense, and that person ended up walking away, and that person never got mentioned. But yeah, I mean, it's a serious type of thing. Yeah.
I mean, I'll just throw a name out there. As I was watching like old French Montana interviews, where because he had a situation back in the day where he was leaving a recording studio. Some guys
interviewed him about that.
Some guys tried to run down on him. Basically, his homie killed the guy with his own gun. French says this in the interviews that he wasn't the one who killed the guy.
French got shot in the head.
Right.
Got grazed in the head, and then that person ended up being dead.
Right.
But it was like a robbery gone bad. Like they were trying to rob French.
But I mean, when you watch the old interviews of French, and I'm sure he wouldn't really be so quick to want to like emphasize this at this point, but he basically like in his old interviews, you could see that he wants to leave some space in the conversation so that the people who are watching can believe that he was the one who actually did it.
Yeah, in my interview, he kind of did that.
Right.
He just said he's dead. Yeah, that dude's dead.
Right.
Not saying someone else shot him, but not saying that he shot him.
Right.
But you kind of think that he shot him because there's no other person in the story, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah.
But when you're actually familiar with like rapper strategy, you kind of see what's going on there. It's like, he wants to sort of leave that open because he knows that at the end of the day, the idea that he might have killed someone is good, especially that early stage in his career. Later in your career, it might be a little bit of a liability.
Yeah, I mean, you're already a platinum rapper, and you try to downplay that stuff because it messes up your endorsements.
But I mean, Gucci to this day will just bring it up. The Baby brings it up on like every song.
Does he?
He talks on what's the new Baby song I was just listening to, but he basically talks about how his daughter saw him kill a guy in Walmart, and he just like emphasizes that detail of it. Like, not only did I kill a guy in the Walmart, that was the last album, but my daughter saw it. Like, that's some serious shit. This actually happened. You know?
Yeah, I mean, someone rolls up on you with a gun. You got your family with you, and you got a gun with you.
Right.
You know, and like everyone hated me after the No Plug interview, talking about the killing of Bankroll Fresh. But a year later, Atlanta PD released the footage, and you see Bankroll Fresh with like an AK-47 or something, waving it around. And I guess the footage cut off right before he shot first.
Really?
It was a return fire kind of situation. It was self-defense. I mean, this is why No Plug is doing an interview, you know, on the same couch as 21 Savage that day. The whole It's a Knife interview, that happened the same day. But people like to really criticize, you should have never given him a platform, he should have never spoken about it. But someone shoots at you first, and you have a gun, what sane person would not return fire?
And the whole situation, the story gets warped because it's like Bankroll Fresh was a beloved rapper, and at that time
in the city, yeah.
At that time, nobody really even knew who 21 was yet. This was like very, very early, and certainly nobody knew who No Plug was yet.
Exactly. And the most popular person will get the most love, right? So the story kind of shifts based on the popularity. I'm trying to. I can't think of a good example of this, but yeah, like the popularity of the person will somehow eclipse the actual facts of the case. But the reality is, No Plug got in front of my camera, signed a release form, and laid out the details of Bankroll Fresh getting killed that night. Why on earth would he do that if it was not self-defense, right? Think about that.
And he had already had his case dismissed?
No statute. Well, the case was still technically being investigated. It wasn't closed at that point. So explain to me why a person would talk about an open murder, something with no statute of limitations that happened within a couple of months, if it was not self-defense.
Right.
Just think about that for a second. With cameras
right.
in the studio and so forth, because they released footage of this shit. And a bunch of witnesses, an open case, if it was not self-defense. But I'm the bad guy for doing the interview. You see what I'm saying?
Whereas if he had, and that argument against you there falls apart even quicker, because it's like, if he didn't do that interview with you, what would he have done? He probably would have hopped on his Instagram live and said the same exact fucking thing.
Or gone somewhere else.
And then it would have been 100% on him and 100%, then everybody else in the media is going to take it and chop it up, and that's going to be the news for a couple of days. I don't really see what the big problem is with you putting him in front of a camera to tell his truth.
Yeah. Listen, I'll be the bad guy sometimes. I'll take the brunt of it. I've been doing this for 12 years. It's not the same philosophy that I came into it with, the same philosophy that I have these days. It's not going to change. We're still going to be the hard-edged, tough question, get to the truth, heavy research platform. And there's plenty of other places like when I interviewed Tim Westwood. He doesn't really do a ton of research. He just likes to go off the cuff. And Tim is dope. He's a legend at this. He's been doing it way longer than me, but we have very different styles.
Right.
You stick two people in front of us, you're going to get vastly different interviews. And there's a fan base for both.
Because Tim Westwood might go get the big name guests that know that they're getting a safe experience there.
Right. I don't get those a lot.
Anybody who's got something to hide. No, yeah, totally. But I mean, I think that the thing with No Plug and 21 that really sort of emphasized them being sort of calloused and sort of cold-hearted in a way that a lot of people at home don't necessarily understand is that clip that you see where 21 is saying on stage to No Plug, he says, I would have said that I'm the dude who killed Bankroll when he's introduced, like he basically just introduced No Plug, and then he specifies to him, and 21 thinks that nobody can hear him, but actually that gives you a glimpse into the fact that at the end of the day, these are rappers, but they're also just people who are involved in street shit who fucking hate each other, and they don't, there's situations like that where it's like clearly 21 doesn't have a fucking grain of sympathy. The way he says that to No Plug, that he just doesn't really, to a lot of people, Bankroll Fresh is this beloved rapper. To him, it's just some guy that they had issues with, or that maybe 21 had issues with, but at least No Plug did.
And this is the dichotomy of gangster rap, to me, is that everyone wants that real gangster shit. But then when you really see that real gangster shit, everyone's like, oh, how could he say that? He's been saying it in all his lyrics this whole time. Do you think that all that's made up? Do you think none of it's based on reality? Do you think that these people have never gotten into a war with somebody and shootings have occurred and people have gotten killed and families have been crying and funerals, have been tragic and hatred and hurt and everything else like that hasn't gone through? You think this is all made up? So then you see all this and everyone's dancing to it and grooving to it and everything else like that. And then when you actually hear some of the real stories behind what actually happened, everyone wants to be fake shocked. Everyone wants to talk about how awful and bad this is. But this is why they got popular in the first place. And this has always been my thing of like, well, why do you ask these guys all these criminal questions? But I'm not asking John B these questions because John B's never talked about it in his music. Mm-hmm. John B could be the biggest mafia leader in North America for all I know, but he just does love songs. So why would I talk to him about that when there was no indication that he was into any of that? But when I talked to like Aquando Rondo, like all his lyrics are about gangbanging and stuff like that. So we're going to talk about that in the interview. Like I'm just going to dance around it and have these boring ass interviews. Like you should see sometimes you go to some of these big radio stations and they'll get like a Gucci or a Lil Baby and they'll be like 238 views.
Oh yeah. Seen it.
You know, I'll hit my assistant. I'm like, this is 238,000. He's like, nope, this is 238. Dot. That's it. I'm like, why did this person even bother to walk into this station? Yeah, okay, you get a little bit of pub in the area from people that are actually listening, but then it's over and they put on YouTube and it goes nowhere at all.
Right.
It's just like, is the interview that bad? Is the platform that inept?
I've seen it before where I've watched people that, like artists that I'm friends with or that I care about or whatever, and I'll see that they went and did an interview with a radio station and I'll go to watch it. And, you know, some of the people I'm friends with are what I would characterize as like bad interviews. Like they just don't really talk or flesh out their answers that much. And the radio DJ will overcompensate for it by basically, you know, we got DJ Vlad in the building. DJ Vlad, one of the best fucking interviews in the game, blah, blah, blah. And they'll do like a 40-second preamble before the question. Then they bust the question out. You give your little like 10-second answer. And then they just sort of like rant again for like 30 or 40 seconds. And then they get into like another like one-word answer. Yeah. And that is like a really bizarre radio guy technique of how to make something out of nothing in an interview.
Yeah, I guess radio interviews have to be short also because.
But then they're doing YouTube and they get the 20-minute version or whatever. But you're right, they might be trying to cut like a 1-minute chunk for the radio.
Yeah, no, I've had so many conversations with program directors about bringing my show to various radio stations, and the answer has always been like, "Yo, we don't do interviews here. We play music and we'll take a couple minutes out of the interview and disperse it between the music, but we're not into these long form conversations." And I'm like, well, I have 2-hour interviews, so yeah, it's just not a good match. Right. And this kind of brings me into why I'm here. You know, we just signed a partnership with iHeart.
Right. So what led to that? And because you stopped doing the podcast
for a while, yeah,
right?
Yeah. Well, we were the company that wasn't that great. We're just gonna leave it at that. And we did it for a little while, and at the end of the day, it just ended up going nowhere. There wasn't really any money. The views weren't really there, so we just completely cut it off for a bunch of years. And a lot of people would always hit us like, yo, like I want to listen to your podcast on Spotify or the iHeart app or Apple Music, you know, Apple Podcasts, whatever else, you know, when I'm going to work. But it's like, well, we're not going to just do it if it's not a real business there. So when we linked up with iHeart, they really understood the significance of what we do, and they really didn't just give us like, okay, yeah, we'll just co-sign you. They're like, okay, we're going to put a significant amount of money into the marketing of it. We're really going to give you something called the best-in-class deal. And we have a whole team at iHeart behind this thing. And it seemed like, okay, well, now we have a company that's going to invest in the promotion, and the overall platform of audio streaming is much bigger than it was before. Because Spotify was very small back then.
5 years ago, it seemed like so much less.
It was SoundCloud
a
mostly.
Real business.
Yeah, it was kind of like SoundCloud and some other crap.
And this new ad network I've been talking to just told me they're like, well, we would kind of like you to stop uploading to SoundCloud because those plays don't count as like verified listens from the advertisers or whatever. Yeah. So if we could just basically move those viewers over to Apple Music or whatever, it would be beneficial.
Yeah. So it just seemed like a cool situation, and we were talking to another company that their marketing budget was like a small percentage of what iHeart was going to do. Like iHeart really stepped in, and I've had talks with Spotify and stuff like that in the past, and there was deals that was supposed to happen that didn't come through. But when iHeart came in, it was like, okay, this is, for the first time, we have a company that's going to put a big push behind what it is that we do, as opposed to us just building it up on our own organically, which is what we've always done. And it allows people to start listening to our stuff on streaming platforms. And we were actually going to launch, there's this really big interview that we have that we were supposed to launch the podcast with, but the climate of the world right now was like, okay, we got to put this aside, push it back, at least a couple of months maybe.
But so this content is completely different than what you do with Vlad TV with the video interviews?
No, it's the same. It's the audio version of our interviews.
Oh, okay.
But we are going to have situations where we're going to premiere, the full interview sometimes on the podcast and stuff like that. We're still kind of learning. People were like, my staff was all excited, like, oh, we got a podcast still. And I was like, slow down. These things take time. As someone that's built a business over 12 years, you really don't get excited because it's ultimately based on you to build up that audience.
Right.
You could have help, you could have assistance, you could have marketing and so forth, but you have to build up that audience week by week, upload by upload. And it may take a while, it may take years. This is a long-term plan in terms of what we do, but I think it's finally time for us to do it. And, Facebook has been a big jump. You just got verified on Facebook.
Just had our first recent success. Spoiler is less than $1,000, but we made some hundreds of dollars off of one video, which that's what you said to me that got me like, all right, we got to focus on Facebook. Is you're like, we had one video do X hundreds of dollars. There might be a future in this.
Yeah. Facebook has really stepped it up. Like, for example, last month, we got 75 million views on YouTube, and we got 50 million views on Facebook.
Wow.
Now, those are 3-second views. Now, the 1-minute views are obviously
much harder to come by.
Smaller, right? I forgot what that number was, but the fact that 50 million people actually started to watch one of our videos, big number.
It's weird because in our world, having a lot of people talking about you on Twitter seems like a really big deal. Having your tweets do really well seems like a big deal. But then in reality, Facebook is a much, much larger audience.
Yeah.
And lets you monetize.
Yeah. And then when Instagram TV, when they start monetizing that platform, like I recently bought a bunch of Facebook stock again. Really? I had been invested in it for a while, and then I think maybe a year or so ago, I sold it all. But I ended up buying a whole bunch recently. Just because I'm watching what's happening on the video side of things, and between Facebook totally revamping their whole video strategy, and now Instagram TV about to become a place to monetize as well, I think the amount of money that they're going to make off video is going to be monumental.
I mean, nothing could be better for content creators than to have Facebook and YouTube and whoever else sort of fighting to do a better job creating a user experience for both the viewers and the creators. And that's what we always lacked on YouTube is it's like, oh, YouTube's going to completely just fucking fry the system by which you monetize your videos. I mean, that was 5 years. The first Adpocalypse was 4 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever. And
3,
What we really had nobody putting pressure on YouTube to come up with a better system because of the fact that there was no real competitor. And now if Facebook becomes more legitimate in that sense, then that just, ideally could create more competition.
Well, the plan all along with what we do was to create one piece of content and put it in as many platforms as possible. That was always the idea, and YouTube was just the only game in town for 11 out of 12 years. But I knew there was more. I mean, at one point we started uploading to Amazon Prime, but there was such a, Amazon Video, but there was such a big, in order to upload a video, you got to do all these things. It's
so
not
you
just
didn't stick with that?
I didn't. You stuck with it?
No, but I've had a few little conversations with people who do that for you. Like, that's their service?
Yeah, but then they charge for the service, and by the time you get nothing back.
Right.
Like, I've gotten 3 videos, and I get a little, that we put up some years ago, and we get a little $23 check every month or something like that. But then again, we never put up about a bunch of our stuff.
Right.
Listen, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm ignoring a completely huge audience here, by not doing Amazon Video. But I'm also limited with my staff. in terms of how much stuff I could do. But like with Facebook, we were able to just take the exact same videos and upload them. You know, with Spotify, we could just strip the audio out of our existing interviews and upload them. Mm-hmm. So now we have YouTube, Facebook, and you know, the streaming, the audio streaming platforms, all getting the same footage in different ways, and all of them have an income stream. You know, plus the website itself has an income stream. It's just, you know, we're actually coming out of the quarantine better off as a company than coming into it. Mm. You know, and then we also figured out different ways to shoot. We figured out different ways to do remote interviews. We've set up more cameramen in studios in other cities and so forth.
I've noticed you had a lot of different backgrounds. You got different cameramen in different cities. That's got to help a lot.
Well, I'm not on camera, right? So I have the flexibility to interview anybody anywhere. Like, I got an interview coming up in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
You know, between a cameraman and FaceTime, it's going to look just like they were there in the same room with me. But it's at a complete opposite side of the world.
I mean, in that conversation, though, about, you know, I feel like, okay, on Facebook, you and I would both definitely be a little bit happier, a little bit more comfortable in our lives if we had been like really going as hard as possible to build up our Facebooks for like the last 10 years, because then we'd be making so much more money now that you can monetize. I'm sort of in a similar position with TikTok, where it's like, okay, now we have a company that's basically helping us adapt our content to TikTok. We just hit 100,000 followers. We got a couple of videos with 1 million views.
Is there any money on TikTok?
Not so much. You can't make money off their content directly, but you can get deals from labels to use their songs, and you could, you know, theoretically promote things on there.
I don't do all that.
Right, but there's gonna be ads sooner or later, because when you go to TikTok, it shows you a big ass ad as soon as you open it.
At the point
it just doesn't help a creator.
For me as a business, until there's actual money per view, I'm not interested. Point blank, period. This is why, for example, we've discussed this, how I actually we track when other people upload our stuff.
Right.
And we get stuff taken down all the time, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's whatever. We get our stuff taken down. You know, to me, the funniest thing is that when someone who really hates me will make a video using my content to create this hateful video about me, and they would disperse my content throughout that video, and then I would get their shit taken down, and then they would complain that I got their shit shut down. But they're using my, you know, like, Vlad's trying to hide the truth. I'm not trying to hide the truth. I'm just protecting my content. You can make as many videos talking shit about me as you want, but you're not going to use my content in the process.
But there's some amount of your content being used by other people that should be under the category of fair use. Don't you agree?
There should, and we allow under a minute. If you want to use under a minute.
Longer than a minute seems a little egregious, yeah.
Yeah, under a minute, you keep our logo. You don't put some other logo on top of the shit. You know, and that's usually the thing. People will crop out your logo, put their own logo on it, and then just use it to their own means. Like, I remember there was an old video that resurfaced that we had where Lord Jamar said he doesn't support Black Lives Matter. He feels it's not, you know, black people's movement and so forth. And I've seen this video co-opted by like white supremacist, you know, social media accounts where they kind of take a part of it and show, oh, look at this rapper saying that he doesn't respect Black Lives Matter, and that type of bullshit. And I get that stuff taken down right away. You know, but my whole thing is like, yo, we worked hard to create this. Like, you know, it looks like when you look at some of your bigger interviews, it looks like the person, you just called them up and they just came over that same day. Sometimes it takes years to schedule an interview. Years of going back and forth with different management, different PR, different this. The person doesn't show up. The person cancels on you. It gets pushed back. It's this, it's that. Then the person finally comes in and you finally film it, and then sometimes that's a nightmare as well, and they don't want to sign release forms, and there's that. And all this stuff happens, and you finally put out this product, and then someone just takes your whole interview, strips out your logo, and then puts it up on their Twitter or whatever so they can get some likes. It's like, nah, we're not going to do that. We're not doing that.
No, that's kind of grimy for sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you this. You've had a few different interviews over the last year where people basically just full on discussed murders that they had committed.
Yeah.
And not necessarily from people not from rappers so much. Maybe, actually some rappers. But for the most part, not mostly rappers.
A lot of mafia guys.
Let's talk about, does that hit in a different way than pretty much everything else that you've had to discuss on the podcast? I've seen some people be very nonchalant about it.
You'd be surprised. I mean, without going into any detail, I've been in some pretty insane situations myself, and I've never killed anybody. Let me just put that out there. But I've come close. You know, I had a situation where I thought I killed somebody in a self-defense kind of situation. And you'd be surprised how little you care about that person after the fact. You think growing up in this society that murder is so bad and you should never kill anyone for any reason, but if someone's trying to kill you and you end up reversing the tape, reversing the roles in that situation, and you're able to get into an advantageous situation with someone who's trying to kill you, you'd be surprised how little you care about that person after you do what you do to that person. You'd really be surprised. Now, if you're out there killing old ladies and you're out shooting people on the freeway and doing that type of thing, you would hope that at one point you would have a high degree of remorse for what you did when someone's just minding their own business and they just get shot in the head, like that shooting that happened in Vegas where the guy just started sniping people off his balcony. But if someone's trying to do you harm and you're more prepared than that person, you'd be surprised how little of a shit you give about that person who's sitting there bleeding on the ground at that moment, or even afterwards. Fuck them. Good riddance.
The mafia guy that you interviewed who was talking about how the guy was trying to molest him and he fucking stabbed him with a broomstick through his chest, right?
Gianni Russo,
right?
Who played in the Godfather.
That was a crazy one because that's the kind of thing that I would think about as a kid, like because they would be warning you like this is what you do if somebody tries to touch you or whatever. And I remember being a kid thinking like, oh man, it would be so cool if I had a weapon and I was able to just kill the guy.
Yeah, that's what he did. He was in a hospital and he had serious health problems, and there was a guy named Harold the Pervert, I think was his name, who was out there molesting kids, and he tried to molest him. He ended up stabbing him with a sharpened broom handle, through his chest. And since I guess the hospital knew that this guy was doing this type of thing, they kind of just hushed up the whole thing and just let him out the hospital, and that was it. And he didn't feel bad about it.
No, he gave zero shits.
He gave zero fucks. But this guy was trying to molest him as, what was he, a 15-year-old boy or something like that?
Yeah.
Who was already sickly, in a hospital, grown-ass man. Supposed to feel bad about that? Fuck that guy. Burn in hell.
Definitely. It would be weird. It would be really weird to do that and then have the hospital be in on covering it up. That's kind of the most mind-blowing thing about that to me.
This is a long time ago. This is not the 80s. This is probably like the 60s or something.
Yeah.
Where you just...
Body just wasn't the same back then, I guess.
Harold who? I haven't seen that guy in months. I heard, no, but you didn't hear nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, a lot of people, man. We've talked about... I've interviewed a lot of people about committing murders.
There was a dude you had a little while ago. I forget his fucking name, but he had a story that I remember you telling me that kind of blew your mind how casual he was talking about it.
There's a few people, man. There's a few people. Yeah. I mean, people have talked about killing like 6-7 people and gone through every story.
Right, and that was why you told me it stood out to you, is because he was actually basically confessing to be a serial killer. I forget who it was. It wasn't a mafia guy.
Who was it? Yeah, it was a guy from Queens.
Right. Should have wrote it down. It wasn't Faison Love? No, it wasn't him.
Faison Love's a comedian.
Okay, whoops.
Faison Love.
I'm fucking the names up. My fault.
Brian Glaze Gibbs.
Oh, right. There you go. Yeah.
Brian Glaze Gibbs killed 6 people. I think a couple of them were women.
Whoa.
Yeah. I was a bit creeped out by some of these stories. Because, one of the stories was there was a guy that robbed his drug spot And so they got the guy's girlfriend to try to get him to talk. And in the midst of trying to scare her into talking, he accidentally shoots her, like in the stomach or something, and then realizes that he needs to kill her or else she's gonna go and testify against him.
Right.
So you're like, I mean, you know, it's a chilling story.
Yeah.
It's not something where there's no self-defense. I mean, he actually was the aggressor during this whole thing. I think they killed some other women also over some robbery type shit. I'm not gonna pretend like I understand any of those types of situations.
Right.
But hey, man, people get into a certain type of life. They end up having, choosing to kill people or sometimes having to kill people, and although society paints this as a thing, and it has very serious ramifications to this, life in prison, the death penalty and stuff like that, a lot of times, the people that you talk to, I mean, it's just one of those things. I had a friend who, a good friend of mine who beat a guy to death with his bare hands at 17. He did like 15, 20 years in prison, I think. I knew him after he had already gotten out, and he didn't mean to kill the guy, but it was like in the midst of a fight, in the midst of a bad situation, things started to escalate, shit started happening, and before you know it, the adrenaline wears off and the guy's dead. He didn't intend to kill the guy, but the guy ended up dead, but it was like in the midst of a fight. And the girl from The Wire, Snoop, that girl Snoop?
Right.
She killed a girl with a baseball bat.
Wow.
Middle of a fight.
And got away with it?
No, she did time over it.
Wow.
Yeah, but she didn't mean to kill the girl. It was just a street brawl that happened.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised, man, how often these things happen. And I think people that have never been in those types of situations look at it as this, like, I don't know, this huge, crazy situation. And it is that, but being in the midst of it, sometimes things just happen.
Right.
And sometimes the other person has it coming to them. You know what I'm saying? Like the baby situation.
Right.
These guys pulled out a gun on him. It's all on camera. What do you expect him to do? Try to convince them not to shoot? They could just kill his daughter right there in front of him? Mm. What do you expect? You think baby feels really bad about those guys, how they passed away? You think he really cries at night thinking about...
I think if he does feel bad, then he's thinking too hard. He's got too much. I don't think he has enough time to think about it. I think if you do feel bad about that at a certain point, you're kind of deluding yourself.
Yeah.
But your mind does play that trick on you, because there's been times in my life where I like knocked somebody's teeth out or just did something that was like particularly violent,
yeah.
And I did feel bad about it afterwards, even though it was definitely in a scenario where more or less like that guy was going to do that to me if he had a chance. And but still something about it. Like there was just one situation where I punched a kid at the bar and knocked his teeth out. And then this girl I was hanging out with said that she saw him with his whole jaw wired shut like a week later or whatever. Yeah. And even though I felt justified in fucking punching this dude, there was like a weird haunting feeling of just thinking about how much pain and suffering I put this dude through from basically what was just a drunken argument at the bar.
Some people have more empathy than others.
Yeah.
I feel my empathy level is not at the very highest,
right,
compared to some other people.
I was in a baby meeting at the doctor the other day, and so this lady is actually scanning my girl's belly and like looking at the fetus in there or whatever. And I'm looking at my phone a little bit, and I actually just said to my girl, I'm like, oh man, they killed this guy's, close to like Chief Keef's brother, like Trey Savage. I was basically damn, one of Keef's real good friends got killed. And my girl was like, oh man, what happened? I'm like, they just shot him in Chicago, I don't know. And the fucking doctor just like sort of turns around and is just like, that is so horrible, I'm so sorry. And I just realized in that moment that the way that I had said it to my girl, as if this was just something that I was completely used to, was so, like, this woman was so blown away at the way it sounded coming out of my mouth. And it's just like you immediately sort of check yourself and realize, like, to the vast majority of the population, like, someone getting shot is, this just doesn't happen throughout the course of their life. And
think about how many people, people love Obama, right? Mm. And I think he was a great president. I'm a huge Obama fan, right? So I don't want this to get misconstrued. But take a step back and think about how many people Obama killed.
Right.
You know, bin Laden is just one of those people. I mean, a bunch of people in that house got killed. And think about how many drone strikes and various other attacks Obama okayed as the commander-in-chief. And all the people, hundreds, maybe thousands?
Oh, yeah. Probably hundreds of innocent people.
Yeah.
Just to go along with the thousands that he intentionally wanted to kill. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Think about how many people Bush killed, you know, in Iraq and so forth. Like, people look at these, depending on who you are, you admire these people. These are great men and they're historical figures. But they're all mass murderers, right? They're all mass murderers, every one of them. Like, very few presidents get to do their term without killing a whole bunch of people under their watch. They could stop all that. They could say, no, we're not going to fight. We're going to pull out. We're going to keep negotiating. We're going to keep taking losses on our end, but we're not going to fight back. We're going to go the Gandhi way or the MLK way of doing things. We're going to show the world that being a victim is going to get the laws changed and get people behind us. But most presidents are mass murderers, which is why they're hated by our various enemies, like the ISIS and so forth. Like they, you know, think about whoever the ISIS leader is, you know, to be in a room with Obama for 10 minutes, they would, you know, they would do whatever they could to that guy because they hate him to that extent. But on our end, he's our forever president. We still love him. He's a great guy. He's this, he's that. But you have to make those decisions sometimes in a situation, and it's ugly. But we all got to die someday.
No, it's pretty bizarre to think about it from the perspective of a president, where it's fully legal, and you're basically just like sending out squadrons of killers. And to compare that to like if Obama had not become president, he certainly would have been responsible for 0 deaths throughout his life.
Correct.
And then instead he gets to the highest office and basically put in a position where, you know, there's thousands of people that need to die as a result of, you know, your country's overall well-being. Correct.
But people don't want to look at it that way.
Right.
They want to just focus on all the positives. They want to focus on universal health care, and they want to focus on the first black president and everything else like that. And like I said, Obama, to me, has been the greatest president that I remember in my lifetime. But you have to look at the other side. And it's always who's looking at it. What lens are you looking at it through? It's a lot more to it.
That's a fact. Did you hop on the phone with Charlamagne recently, you said?
Yeah.
What spurred that conversation?
You're the first person to,
right.
to know about this publicly.
But you said, didn't you say it on social media or something?
No, I don't think I did.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I did, but we could break it on here.
Sure.
I'm cool
Okay.
with that.
What spurred this conversation?
I'm actually we're actually scheduling a Breakfast Club interview.
Wow.
I'm going to be on the Breakfast Club.
I noticed you were on it like 6 years ago or something.
Yeah,
right?
a long time ago.
Very different Vlad, a much chunkier Vlad, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I'm actually we're trying to schedule a date for the Breakfast Club. You know, as I'm doing my promo run for the whole iHeart deal.
Oh, because now you're in the iHeart La Familia. I get you.
Yeah, I just did Nick Cannon's show yesterday. I'm not sure if it's out yet or not. But yeah, I'm supposed to do Breakfast Club for the first time in a long time. Me and Charlamagne just jumped on the phone. We had a falling out some years back, and it was somewhat over the no plug interview. That was part of it, I believe, and he went on Joe Budden's podcast to announce there that he's not messing with me anymore. And, you know, and Joe Budden, you know, for people that know, dislikes me a lot. You know, so me and Charlamagne had gone back, like we had known each other since 2005. You know what I'm saying? So we had known each other for over 10 years. Maybe by that time, I mean, hold on, let me do my math. Yeah, maybe like 15 years we'd known each other, to the point of I was the first person to put him on a mixtape while he was still a DJ in South Carolina. Because someone had sent me a clip of him like arguing with like Buffy the Body live on the air, and I put out this beef. It was like the national mixtape for the beef DVD.
I'll forever be bummed that I missed the Buffy the Body era.
The era.
Yeah,
She's still around.
I mean, I was watching, but I wasn't a content creator at that time. Yeah.
I interviewed her early on. I remember. So yeah, but and you know, I remember he called me up after he was on the mixtape, and that's how we began our relationship. I had featured him while he was on the radio in Philly. When he had lost his job in Philly, he was between jobs. I continued to interview him. He got on Breakfast Club. We continued to do interviews. We celebrated birthdays together. He had been in my home. He had met my family.
Okay, so it was actually pretty deep. Yeah.
It was, yeah, we would talk regularly. It was an actual friendship. It wasn't just business. It was like, yo, this is my man. And we had been rolling like that for a while. And I remember there was like a period of time that went by where whenever we tried to book him for an interview, we would kind of get the runaround. And I even said, I said, look, man, if you feel in your career that you don't want to do any more Vlad TV interviews for whatever reason, like, it's all good. Just tell me. Not a big deal. We're still friends. Like, no, it's not that. It's not that. I'm just really busy. And then he goes on Joe Budden's podcast, and then he's like, nah, I ain't messing with Vlad anymore. And I'm like, yo, like, I'm finding out like this. And me and him spoke afterwards, and what he told me wasn't really just a good explanation for it. It was just like, kind of like, not really an explanation as to why he did that. So I said, all right, cool, I'm done. So I just stopped talking to him altogether for years. I just said, look, like, if you're not, if this is based on the depth of our relationship, if this is how you express yourself, it's not someone that I really want to keep associating with. So we stopped talking for years. One point he reached out, and I didn't answer because I felt the timing of him reaching out, I felt was kind of more of a PR move or a damage control move.
During his allegations being brought up?
Yeah. He had reached out during that time, and I felt like, this just feels like damage control. This doesn't feel like he wants to actually like mend this relationship.
But he wanted to go on Vlad TV to talk about that shit?
No, he just reached out to me.
Oh, okay.
He just like texted me, like, yo, we should talk. And I'm like, I just didn't even answer. And you know, right around sort of the start of the quarantine, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine. I was telling him about the situation, and he kind of gave me a different perspective of it. And this is someone who was like a close friend of mine who I really respect. And he kind of said, you know, you should try to at least have a conversation with this guy. It's been a while. You know, you guys are both successful. Like, you guys have a long history. So I hit him up, and he hit me back right away, and we got on the phone. And the first thing he did was just apologize. He was like, yo, man, I was wrong for that. He's like, based on the way our history, that was not the way I should have dealt with it. And I regret doing that. And as we were talking, and I was talking about that particular situation, because he was, yeah, you know, and the whole no plug thing, it's like I'd heard that people were kind of getting hurt over that. And, you know, like some violence had broken out over that interview and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, a year later, the footage was released, and it was pretty much what was said in that interview. It was a self-defense situation. Like, what would you do? And he was like, no, I feel you. Like, you know, he's like, you're right. You know, once more information got out, I realized that it was not just so clear cut. It wasn't just Vlad trying to create a whole bunch of chaos. It was really a thing. So me and him had a long conversation. We were on the phone for like hours. But you know, he apologized, and he kept it 100 with me, which he didn't have to do. He could have been like, you know how people like, well, I'm sorry you felt that way. You know, one of those like, well, I'm sorry that you took it that way.
Right.
It wasn't that. It was like, yo, I shouldn't have done that. I should have got on the phone with you, and we should have hashed it out, and it should have been more of a private thing than going public with someone that I know doesn't like you.
You can kind of relate to where he might have been at that moment, because there is like everything on social media just gets simplified down to its most basic element. There's a good chance that he didn't even see that interview. He just saw that there was a narrative going that like, oh, Vlad basically like gave this guy a platform to sort of celebrate killing somebody.
Yeah. It could have been that. And, and on the same token, we pretty much stopped covering Charlamagne unless there was something negative about Charlamagne. So I'm like, I was wrong for that too.
Right.
I shouldn't have done that. So I apologize for my actions, and we've been cool ever since.
That's dope.
We've been cool ever since, and it was like some real grown man, some real type shit. It wasn't like he's up here and I'm over here and we're sitting there trying to out-muscle each other, talking about who got more money or who got more power or whatever else. It was just like, just two old friends who had a falling out, who didn't talk for a couple of years, who were just kind of keeping it 100 with each other. So,
right.
You'll probably see more stuff with me and Charlamagne in the future.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Happy to hear that. Where did the Joe Budden riff come from? Like, has it always been like that? Was there a time you guys were cool?
We actually have an interview. I went to his house at one point. Well, not like to his like area, like plaza where he was living in Jersey, and we did an interview with him early in my career. This was around like 2008, and then I think what had happened was the ransom situation happened.
Right, which very few people remember that.
You got to
these days.
really go back to that, but basically it was like Joe Budden and this other rapper from New Jersey named Ransom, who was known but wasn't as big as Joe Budden, had no hits. He didn't have a Pump It Up.
And who I just want to say was hard. Ransom, I really liked Ransom a lot at that time.
He's dope. And, to make somewhat of a long story short, essentially, Joe Budden was on his own YouTube channel and he was dissing Ransom. So we hit up Ransom and say, hey, do you want to respond to this? He's like, hell yeah. And he did his big response, and in the response, it got real personal with Joe. He was saying things about, Tahiri and then things like that. And then Joe saw that and got mad and went to Ransom's block and I guess tried to jump him. And I guess someone fired a gun, and then Joe Budden did another video bragging about that, and then Ransom ended up going to like Joe Budden's man's house and ends up slapping him on his front porch, and he gave us the video, and we put that video out, and that just went super viral, like imagine like the biggest viral video right now back then.
And it was just Joe's friend, right?
Yeah. It wasn't even Joe, but it was Ransom.
Yeah.
Ransom was the one that actually did the video and was in the video and so forth like that.
And this was like the kind of thing that just did not happen at that time on the hip hop internets yet. This is like
just did not.
This was very new.
This was very new. Like Twitter was new, YouTube was new. People like took and I think that situation embarrassed Joe, and I think that there were some other situations over time of interviews that I did and content that I created that embarrassed Joe as well. And Joe couldn't do anything about it. All he could do was just get angry and talk a bunch of shit about me, but he couldn't actually do anything about it. And I think that kind of enraged him. And so it kind of started a bit of a back and forth that went on kind of forever, And at one point, like, you get to a certain point in your life and you say, am I just going to keep beefing with people forever? Like, I remember me and Crooked I kind of had a bad situation that happened. There was a shooting video that we put up where he got shot. I didn't realize he got shot, but there was a shooting and a video. We put it up. He asked to take it down. We said no, and then he got really angry, and then he like dissed me on the Slaughterhouse album. But I remember calling up Royce and saying, hey, look, I wanna apologize to Crooked. And just pass that message along to him. If he wants to get on the phone, cool. If not, if he still hates me, I got it. It's cool. I'm just letting him know that I apologize. And we got on the phone and we hashed it out. And he apologized for some things he said. And he kind of explained the situation to me more in depth. And I'm like, yeah, something, I probably shouldn't have put it out. I didn't even realize he got shot, but I can understand your mother seeing it and stuff like that. And we're actually friends to this day. Like, we had lunch, a couple months ago before before the pandemic starts. We talk on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And I remember hitting up a couple people, like I think academics. I'm like, hey, tell Joe, listen, man, I apologize for the things I did that fucked you up, that made you lose money or made you look bad or whatever else. I had a new outlet. I was trying to push it. I didn't care. I was really like, fuck everybody, and I don't care the repercussions of what I do, and I just put everything out and went hard on anything and anyone who went back at me. I would, bring their girlfriends on and talk about them and do whatever else. But like, listen, I'm wrong for that, and let Joe know that I apologize for things I did. If he wants to talk about it, cool. If not, whatever. And the response I got was, keep that same energy when you see me. Joe's still mad at me.
Really?
And that's cool. He's probably going to be mad at me forever. The funny part is that maybe about 6 months ago, we were outside of the strip club in New York, like over by the back door. I forgot which one it was.
I've never been to any of them, so.
Yeah, but like my son was with me that day, but he was actually by the car, and I was with my man.
And this is a recent story or an old story?
Maybe like 9 months ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we were in New York.
Vlad in New York City strip club with my son running into Joe Budden sounds like an old story. Okay.
We're standing, maybe about 9 months ago or so, and we're by the back door, and the door opens, and Joe Budden and his driver walk right past us. And I'm sitting there, and I'm with my man, like the dude that killed someone with his bare hands, right? Uh-huh. Like that guy. And he walks by, and I'm like, oh, shit, it's Joe Budden. Like, I haven't seen him in years. And I'm like, he walks by, then he's in the car for a while, and I'm like, he's in the car for like 15 minutes. So I'm like, okay, I know he sees me now. Uh-huh. 'Cause I'm right here in front of the... Right. I'm just literally like right here in front of the strip club. He never comes out. And I was just like, this would be, this is an interesting opportunity for us to talk. But I wasn't gonna go knock on the door or whatever else. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure he saw me, but he didn't want to talk at that point. So people have this whole bravado. Oh, when I see him, I'm gonna fuck him up. Blah, blah. But when I'm out, I'm pretty well protected. Right. I don't think. I think a lot of people like to talk, and a lot of people like to say, this is gonna happen, that's gonna happen. But then when they actually get in that situation, they see the other people involved in this particular situation, most people don't really want those problems. They'd rather go do their podcast and talk.
It's pretty crazy that like 10 years later, you guys have very similar jobs. Whereas at the time, he was a rapper that was just like in this crazy street beef that you were just documenting.
Yeah, no, it's funny because ultimately Joe ended up doing what I do, right? We started out with him being a rapper.
And
12 years
you're the
ago.
person that people are talking about, and then time goes by.
He's
still that, but it's mostly him commentating.
He doesn't rap anymore.
No, but he's still like the person that people are talking about, regardless of if they're talking about him talking about other people.
He does what I do now. That's his job now. He does what I do. And it's almost like you kind of get, sometimes people don't want to see a mirror to themselves. It's like, oh, no, I'm nothing like Vlad. Well, what you do is pretty much what I do. You talk about current situations. You get popular when you have more of an abrasive tone in terms of what you do, right? Like the Migos situation, right? So we do the same thing. And shout out to Joe. If Joe ever wants to get on the phone with me and talk, I have no ill feelings towards him at all. At all. I'm actually proud of his Spotify deal. He's always high on the podcast charts. I think he managed to reinvent himself. There's lots of rappers from his era that are struggling right now, trying to, not getting shows right now and trying to figure out how to pay their rent, trying to how to feed their families. He's doing well right now. He reinvented himself. I thought Everyday Struggle was a dope show that, was really based on his framework. He went on, did the Joe Budden podcast. He's got the Revolt thing. I think what he's doing is great, and I have no ill will towards him at all, but I think that he's still mad at me based on everything I've always heard. Because I've already said, and on top of that, I told my staff not to cover him anymore, not as a animosity thing, but as okay, if we cover him, he's gonna take it as we're bashing him. So let's just not cover him at all, so he has no reason to think that we're bashing him. Like, if you literally look on Vlad TV, you will not see a Joe Budden post in like 5 years when he's been in the news. Lots of times.
You skipped Migos Gate.
Skipped it.
Wow.
Skipped it.
It's a lot of self-control.
Yeah, skipped it. Even though I knew it would get a ton of views. I just skipped it. But it was just because of those things, because I was just tired of like, I would post something, he'd get mad, and he'd say something about me, and he'd say he'd want to fight me or some nonsense like that. And then I would do some other shit to piss him off, or I would say something about him and so forth. But it's just like, yo, like, come on, man. I'm gonna be 47 in a few days. He is like, what, 40 or something? Like, we got families, we got successful businesses, and if you really look, and I'm sure Joe's gonna say I don't give a shit about this, but like, when you look at my relationship with you, we both have gained by being cool with each other as opposed to competing with each other. You and I could have easily said, fuck that other guy. He's my competition. I'm gonna just bash him every time I can. I could, yeah, no jumper. Oh, they just copy me, and you know he's trying to be me, and you know, just a bunch of nonsense that's not true. I could totally just bash you every chance I get, and we could be enemies, and we could make a little bit of money off the views from the beef or whatever, or we could say there's plenty of room for both of us. There's billions of people out there. We have no shortage of fans that want to watch our shit. Let's be cool with each other. And if I have some sort of business thing that I think you could benefit off of, I'll tell you about it. And if I need a contact of someone you've interviewed, you'll give me that contact, and vice versa. And if I can, you know what I mean? And this is how you and I have been rolling. And I feel like you and I have made more money being cool with each other as opposed to being enemies. So I've always been it's always been kind of weird to me why some people like a Joe would prefer to just be enemies forever, because I could help him out and he could help me out. We could both probably make an extra $1 million by just being cool with each other. But it's not everyone thinks the same way. Not everyone's really just purely about business and could put personal feelings aside and try to get over things.
Do you think there is a little bit of a code where media personalities kind of don't go at each other or document each other? Like, you see the actual beefs, but I've had that conversation with academics before where he told me that he didn't really like to cover people in the media super hard because he felt like there's a degree to which, you know, it's so easy as media personalities to sort of shape narratives around people that you should kind of avoid it. And then I ended up feeling kind of bad because I interviewed Selena Powell, and she basically told me a story about her fucking 6ix9ine, and it was according to academics, it was a situation where basically like he brought her around 6ix9ine, and then 6ix9ine ended up fucking her, and it was just whatever because he just didn't care. According to her, and the way she tried to shape the narrative of that story, she made it sound like it was some kind of weird freak thing where academics was like hyped on 6ix9ine fucking her or whatever, and
okay.
I know he wasn't happy about that, and I ended up feeling kind of bad about it because it's like, you know, we are both media personalities, we're supposed to be cool, and then she comes on here and basically like tells a story that, while technically true, was basically just like adding this different narrative. And then, like, you know, I've had situations recently like where one academics' like most recent ex-girlfriend hit me up trying to do the podcast, and I was just like, you know, we don't really have anything to talk about besides the fact that you dated this guy, so I'm going to pass just because it kind of feels like, as us both being media personalities, it just sort of feels kind of odd to cover that.
No, I feel you. I mean, Q from Worldstarr didn't like me, you know, at the time that he died. We had interviewed Cat Stacks about his story, and, you know, to be fair, before doing the interview, because me and him were really cool at one point, like before we had these websites, he was actually booking tours for me in Australia and
oh wow,
and, you know, Bahrain and stuff like that. And he went on tour with me. We'd mess with girls in the same hotel room, and, you know, like, it was like that was my man. And once we started competing companies, he kind of didn't really like me that much, and we kind of became cool. But then the Cat Stacks interview happened. But I remember I reached out to them and said, hey, listen, we're going to do this interview. Are y'all okay with it? And they said they're okay with it. But then when it came out, they weren't okay with it. So it's, I don't know. you have your responsibilities to your audience. You have your responsibility to your business connections. You have responsibility to your friends. You have responsibility to your family. It's all a balancing act. It's all a balancing act. But I try to be cool with people that have been cool with me to the best of my ability. But sometimes certain things got to fly.
It's a weird decision-making process too, because like throwing it back to that Joe Budden and Ransom situation, it's like Joe is going to be the person in that situation, which again is like over 10 years old, but he's going to be the person in that story that doesn't want to do a million interviews about it. Whereas the person who's less known is going to be the person that is down to do 10 interviews about it. And they're going to tell you all a bunch of other stuff and everything.
Yeah.
So it's very easy for you to sort of soil your relationship with the star of the show by doing content that will certainly perform well with all kinds of like, you know, B-level players in the story. Like realistically, you know, if you wanted to like get Joe Budden viewers to watch your content, you could interview some guy he went to high school with. You can interview all kinds of different people you don't like that he used to rap with. Some girls that got stories saying, oh, he did this, and this. There's a million things you could do if you're willing to just sort of like sub in all the B team players for the A-lister content.
You could do a lot. I mean, we just interviewed Billy Otto and Seiko Billy.
Right.
Which you did an interview as well, you know, about the 6ix9ine story. And it got millions of views.
Yeah, same. People were overjoyed to see that content, apparently.
Yeah, no, it got a lot of views, and you could always, I mean, how many Tupac-related interviews have I done? Probably more than any other human being on Earth. You know, but at the end of the day, what are you going to do? Some people will just never be cool with each other, and that's fine. You know, like the only thing that Joe has said that somewhat annoyed me was that on this podcast he said, well, and I heard that Vlad's platform has been decreasing year after year, so that, you know, I'm glad for that. And I'm like, that is so completely false. Like that is so we had like a 50-something% increase last year and the year before. Like we hit 4 million subscribers. We did 800 million views last year on our YouTube channel. Like that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to say something about me, go ahead and say something, but don't just make up, you know, false stats because someone told you, you know, look it up.
It's just because it would take you like 2 minutes to go on Social Blade and be like,
Yeah, but it's always a balancing act. It's always a balancing act, and there's certain people that you just will never be cool with for the rest of your life. Both of y'all gonna die not liking each other, and that's fine, because you don't have to, especially with the internet, that there's such a, you know, and owning your own company and saying, I'm going to interview anybody that I feel my audience will react to. You know, the fact that we have not covered Joe Budden, like I said, on the website in 5 years has not affected our traffic. Lots of other people. The fact that me and Joe have not done any interviews did not impact my company. The fact, you know, and like, you know, we talked about the Charlamagne thing. Me and Charlamagne haven't rocked together in 3 years. Breakfast Club's been doing great. Vlad TV's been doing great, even though Charlamagne was my first regular guest. And people, oh, you know, without Charlamagne, there'll be no Vlad TV. Well, we've proven that wrong. You know, or people say, oh, without Charlamagne going on Vlad TV, he's, you know, the Breakfast Club's going to go away. No, he's proved that wrong as well. We don't have to mess with each other to be successful. And there's certain people that will never mess with each other. Well, you know, 50 and Ja Rule will never be cool with each other. Let me just say, knowing both of them, I know Ja pretty well. Me and Ja talk. 50 I've had a few conversations with. But knowing how the two of them are, they will never be cool with each other ever for the rest of their lives. They will die with probably the other person on their mind as they're passing away.
Yeah.
You know?
I can't see that one fixing itself.
Yeah. And that's okay. 50's been successful, and regardless of what people think about Ja's still rich. Last time I saw Ja, he was in a Phantom, and we were talking about his yacht.
Wow.
I want to be broke like Ja. You know, most people who talk shit about Ja Rule are, you know, damn near homeless compared to his financial level. So it doesn't have to be worked out.
Right.
It could just be. And No one's going to do nothing to nobody, no matter how much shit that people talk on their podcasts, pretending how tough they are, and they're going to do this, they're going to do that. People run into each other. Both people got security, or at least one of the people have security, and the other person doesn't do nothing.
Right.
You know, it's just, life just keeps going, and the other person just glosses it over, and they keep living their life, and they keep being successful. You know, like I said, shout out to Joe, man. He's really reinvented himself, and he's really done well, and he has a podcast that people fuck with. Congrats.
Definitely. Okay, so that was a pretty solid interview right there. What do you? So you're excited about the iHeart deal, of course, working on this regular content. Anything else in particular that you want to big up?
Well, you know, Vlad TV continues. I mean, we put out 7 clips a day. You know, plus a flashback, plus a full interview on certain days, plus a podcast now, and you can watch Vlad TV on YouTube and Facebook. All of our videos get uploaded to Facebook the same day. You know, people always ask, well, what's next? What's next? What's next? I mean, the iHeart deal was kind of a what's next, but it's really the same mentality of what I've always done, and that is to release new content 365 days a year, to get the stories that no one else is willing to get more in depth, to chronicle this culture for generations to come. You know, what I do, and the reason why I'm not on camera a lot is because, you know, I'm trying to set up a documentary style body of work that could be used hundreds of years from now. You know, like we did John Witherspoon's only, you know, life story type interview. Like
a couple months before he passed,
couple months before he passed, yeah. And it's like, there's so many important stories out there. You know, and people really focus on some of the titles and the clips or whatever, but when you just take a step back and you look at the amount of life stories that we've gotten on people that will never get a documentary made about them. They'll never get a big movie made about them. That this is, at the time of their passing, this is the only time that they got to tell their story. And it's a very important story. Like, you know, we just did Craig Hodges, who played with Jordan on the NBA, on the Bulls, I mean. And he gave a letter to George H.W. Bush, you know, when they go to visit the White House, talking about, you know, the treatment of black people in America. And after that letter, he never played again. He was blackballed from the NBA. You know, everyone knows about Kaepernick, but very few people know about Craig Hodges.
Because he gave that letter to...
Because he gave that letter.
Wow, I got to fucking watch that one. I didn't know that. Wow.
He was Kaepernick before Kaepernick. But back then, there was no social media. This is the 80s, right? And the story just got brushed under the table. You know, he actually tried to get, you know, in the finals, when the Bulls were playing the Lakers, he tried to get Magic Johnson and, you know, Michael Jordan not to take the field, you know, and they both refused. But that's what he was trying to do. Like, he was really trying to protest while he had that spotlight, but you don't hear about his story. And, you know, he's talking about getting a documentary made and a movie made, but you don't know. I mean, this is an older man now. He's like in his 60s, I believe.
Live TV interviews like a test case for the documentary. Like, look, I got 1 million views on here. We can make a documentary about this, right?
We've had documentaries made based on our interviews. Like, you know, the Michelle A. biopic was our interview. Like, watch the biopic, then watch our interview, and you'll see the exact same story laid out in the exact same way. Right. You know, we've had a lot of times this has happened, and that's sort of the important thing for me is like, yo, you know, and there's been a lot of people like Dick Gregory, who we had an interview that they agreed to do, but I never got a chance to go out to Washington, D.C., and then he died. And I never got to capture a story, you know, for ages to come. And there's lots of Dick Gregory interviews out there, but none of them actually tell his story from beginning to end. And that's what I'm really trying to accomplish, because I'm only here for a certain amount of time. I'm going to pass away at some point, but I'm going to leave behind thousands of hours of footage of important people where they only got to tell their story on this platform, because no one else ever bothered to ask them anything but their new project.
Yeah, what's your new project like? Who's on that? What features you get?
Yeah. Like I feel like no one gets in depth as much as I do, which is but by design. And that's what I'm really trying to accomplish. And I keep trying to elevate that, and I keep trying to get bigger guests. And now, you know, at one point I started getting more NBA stars like the John Sallies or the Matt Barnes, and, you know, more football stars like the Warren Sapps. You know, now we're doing some wrestling like, you know, the Mark Henrys and, you know, New Jacks. And now we get more mafia stories, you know, Italian mafia stories. We have more gangster stories. We have R&B stories like, you know, Anthony Hamilton. We got that interview coming up, like, and so forth. And it's just as many of these stories that I could capture and put out in a respectful manner. That to me is my main goal.
I respect it. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the game that you've sort of given me about like the long-term importance of interviews has kind of helped to shape the way that I think about it, because there is sometimes you get caught up in the feeling of just doing the content and putting it out, and you don't really think about how that content actually benefits people or really creates like an important dialogue in the long term. But I mean, my X interview, the X interview, that proved the whole experiment 100% to me, because that to me was like the sole blueprint of who he was as a person at a younger point.
His first interview, and one of his only interviews, period. How many interviews did he have? Like maybe 2 or 3?
Yeah, he did like a radio interview one time.
Yeah, at Miami.
Yeah.
And there's your interview.
He did an interview right when he got out of jail. That he did think it was Real 92.3 or some shit.
Exactly. Yeah, so there's like 3 interviews, but you captured it. And that's history forever. You didn't know how big he was going to be at the time. Like I did the Migos' first interview. I had no idea. They were just some local, you know, it was done as a favor to Coach K. I was supposed to get a Gucci Mane interview in exchange for doing that interview, which I never got. But, you know, like, I interviewed Bill Duke, the actor, and I did the interview like, I don't know, 2 years ago, and he was talking about growing up as a kid and dealing with the racism of that era. We're talking about the 40s, and a firsthand account of that, of living down south as a black person during that era. And this past week, that interview's got an extra 500,000 views from that interview. No promotion, no nothing. I don't think anything's even happened to him news-wise, but just people are being drawn to that interview and that content based on the social climate of what's happening right now.
Wow.
500,000 people. I mean, it's got like 1.3 million views right now, but 500,000 of those views came within the past week.
That's crazy.
And it's just like that reinforces my mission statement of like, okay, like you put out this strong, important, evergreen content, and it will continue to live on forever. Years later, decades later, centuries later.
That's a
fun thing.
It's very important shit.
Yeah.
DJ Vlad, appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, man.
Thank you once again. It was a good one. I'm sure there'll be a third one.
Oh yeah.
No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world. Check us out on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes. Like, comment, and subscribe. NoJumper.com if you want to support. Appreciate you, Vlad.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Peace. What's up, everybody? This is Vlad from Vlad TV. Thanks for watching my No Jumper interview, and make sure you check me out on youtube.com/VladTV or Vlad TV anywhere.